In an interview, Rishi Sunak said he was undecided on the date of the next general election. The British Prime Minister's Conservative Party is set for a heavy defeat at the national election expected later this year if polls are to be believed. A seat prediction published on Wednesday showed the opposition Labour Party winning more than 400 seats. The YouGov model projected that Sunak's Conservatives would win just 155 seats and Labour would win 403 seats. Britain's Parliament has 650 seats. Polls have consistently given Labour a double-digit lead over the Conservatives, ahead of an election which Sunak has said he expects to call in the second half of the year.
Look, I said my working assumption is there'll be an election in the second half of the year, and I'll stick to that.
No
but
June.
Ultimately, look, we've got a long-standing tradition. It's the Prime Ministers that decide when we're going to call an election, and I haven't decided because I'm busy focusing on the things that matter to people, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, making sure that we improve the economy, get people's pay packets rising, cutting their taxes, getting illegal migration down,
Lots of our readers have written
in. That's the things that I'm focused on delivering for people.
Rishi Sunak's now heading for a worse result than John Major's 1997 total of 165 seats. The coming tidal wave projected by the YouGov model would sweep away several major Conservative figures. The most prominent casualty could be the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who is currently fractionally behind the Liberal Democrats in his Godalming and Ash seat. Science Secretary Michelle Donelan is also currently trailing the Liberal Democrats in her Melksham and Davies seat. And Michael Gove is just 1 point ahead in his Surrey Heath seat. Now, the recent weeks have seen rumours that Penny Mordaunt could issue a leadership challenge against Sunak. The Commons leader is 4 points behind Labour in her Portsmouth North seat. Cabinet colleague Welsh Secretary David T.C. Davies is also trailing Labour, and so are former leader Ian Duncan-Smith and the former leader of the House of Commons, Jacobs Rees-Mogg. Now, Sunak also defended his government's contentious bill to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. He told the Sun newspaper's political editor Harry Cole that controlling illegal migration is more important than the UK's membership of the European Court. The United Nations Human Rights Committee urged Britain in March to abandon the bill, which could become law next month. Sunak's Conservative government wants to relocate thousands of asylum seekers who arrive in Britain on small inflatable boats each year to live in Rwanda. Legal challenges have so far prevented anyone being sent to the East African country.
If you come to our country illegally, you won't be able to stay and we will be able to return you. Either to your home if it's safe, but if not, to a safe alternative, and that's where Rwanda comes in. Now, that's why I'm doing everything I can to get this bill through Parliament so that we can start sending people to Rwanda.
Well, for more on this, we're now joined by our correspondent, Julia Chapman from London. Julia, another week, another damaging poll for Rishi Sunak's Conservatives. Give us your assessment of this latest model from YouGov and the potential ramifications in this election year.
Well, it continues to look particularly difficult for the Conservative Party. Another poll predicting that they will be wiped out at the general election whenever that ends up being held. This prediction looking at each individual constituency in the country, giving a lot of granular detail into the areas where the Conservatives are facing particular difficulty and the names that you outlined that are at risk of losing their seats. Big names like the Chancellor, the country's finance minister, Jeremy Hunt. He would certainly be the most prominent, but also the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, looks likely to lose his seat on the current trajectory, according to this YouGov poll. And this was a poll that was an independent poll. It hadn't been commissioned by anyone, unlike a similar one carried out a few months ago. So everybody looking at this morning, particularly damning reading for the Conservative Party, heaping more pressure on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to pull his party out of the doldrums and put it on a path to winning more seats. This is a particularly stark number that we're hearing from YouGov, setting the Tories up to win just 155 seats in Parliament. That would be a loss of 210 seats from what they have at the moment, putting Labour on a course to win 403 seats, a pretty sizable majority, not as many seats as they did win in that 1997 election. That was 418, but still a pretty significant victory if that is indeed where things go when it comes to having that general election expected later this year. Now, you've been speaking about the Rwanda policy. That is one area that Rishi Sunak is pinning his hopes on. That does look likely to go through Parliament in the coming weeks. But as you mentioned, there could be court challenges from a European court, which Rishi Sunak has suggested he would be willing to pull out of if it did jeopardise this policy of sending migrants to Rwanda. But ultimately, that's not the main issue that most British voters will be casting their ballots on when it comes to going to the polls later in the year. The economy is by far the most significant concern for most people, according to the polls. The healthcare service as well, which is facing a number of different challenges. Rishi Sunak says that he is on track to improve the economy, despite the fact that the most recent figures confirmed that the UK was in a recession towards the end of last year. The economic figures are looking better now. He says that people need to stick with him in order to help his plan see fruition, promising to improve the livelihoods of the British people, to cut taxes as well. So he wants to be positioning himself as someone who can lead the country going forward. But this poll suggests that he will not be the one leading the country after the next election.
Absolutely. Tough job ahead, I think, for Rishi Sunak. Julia Chapman, many thanks for your insight there.